Hello, welcome to Exotic Gardening UK, Yorkshire Kris Weekly. Hopefully you've watched the other two videos in this series. Wow, what a cold winter we've had, and wow, what a mild winter we've had. And then this video will explain what those two videos were all about. If you've not watched those videos and you want to watch this video first, that's fine, it will be self-explanatory. If you watch those first, it will make a little bit more sense. So this video is all about microclimates. What is a microclimate and how can it benefit you and your garden? Well, a microclimate is a small area of your garden where the conditions are more favourable. Normally it's warmer, it can be more sheltered, it can be out of the wind and rain, and it can be a better area for plants to overwinter and get through cold winters. So why is this important? Well, basically, if you can identify where your microclimates are in your garden, it means you can grow more tender plants without having to protect them, and you can get away with more plants overall, a bigger range of plants in your garden, so you can have a more exotic look. So in the two videos in this series, so wow, what a cold winter, and wow, what a mild winter we've had, we looked at certain plants, and in some cases the same plants were in both videos. So in the cold winter video, the plants looked almost dead or dying with damage, and in the mild winter video you can see plants looking good, undamaged by the cold weather. And all the plants shown in those two videos are in the same garden. The only difference between the success in a lot of cases is not just down to the hardiness of the individual plants, but where those plants are growing in the garden. So let's look at a few examples. If we look at the tree ferns Dicksonia antarctica, I showed in the mild video that everything was looking lush and green, evergreen fern of the tree fern, all the leaves were looking good, and it got through the winter no trouble at all. In the cold video, tree ferns Dicksonia antarctica were looking bedraggled with all brown crispy leaves looking completely dead, yet both those plants are growing in the same garden with pretty much the same temperatures really. You know, you do your temperature somewhere in your garden and you expect that same temperature to be all the way throughout the garden, and pretty much on the whole it is. But because of microclimates, one is looking green, evergreen, one is looking very damaged and dead, although it won't be. And the reason is the one that was looking green had the shelter of a laurel tree. So it's got eucalyptus, it's got a laurel tree providing shelter above it and to the side. So not only is it a bit drier under there, so it's not getting snow and rainfall as much as in a more open area, it's also less prevalent to the cold drying wind, so the leaves aren't drying out, and it will be keeping a tiny bit more warmth in that area compared to the open exposed areas in the garden. So that has remained evergreen and looking lush, whereas the other tree fern is in a more exposed part of the garden. Yes, it's got shelter from the bamboo hedge on one side, but more importantly it hasn't got any absolute overhead canopy over the top of it, so it is more exposed to the frost and snowfall when that happens as well. So it means the leaves have died off in the cold winter we've had, because we did have overall a cold winter. So that's the tree ferns. Another example we looked at in both videos was the aloe striatula, and that both planted in the garden, in the same garden, in the back garden where it's in a bit more shade, completely decimated and browned off, in the front garden where it gets early morning sun and good sun throughout the day, even in winter. It is remained green and it's not been touched at all by the cold. So that is an example of the actual sunlight and light affecting the plants and keeping one green and one not green, whereas in the tree ferns it was the overall canopy and shade that protected one, and in the more exposed sunnier location it's actually had more damage for that plant. Now we had some other examples in both those videos, so yes, I'd like you to have a look at those videos really, because it will show you some more examples of plants that have either died or suffered or got through the winters really, really well. One sort of standout performer in terms of coming through the cold winter in my mild winter video was the aeoniums. Aeoniums are tender plants and they shouldn't really get through most winters in most of the UK without showing some damage. Yet the ones in my garden, in those little pots, just tiny plants really, they've got through basically -6.7, lots of snow on a couple of days, lots and lots of cold weather, and yet they've remained green. How has that been possible? Well, basically they had an extremely good microclimate, because they're in 2 pots, but they are right by the side of the base of the house where it's getting lots of warmth from the thermal warmth from the bricks, and it's also right at the base, and it's got shelter from the porch on one side, and it's also got like the bins and some other structures to one side. So the aeonium survived in the area next to the house simply because of the warmth and the shelter they got. So even when it was -6, nearly -7 in the garden, right by the house, right at the ground level, at the footings of the house, it was warm enough to get through the winter for those aeoniums. So it will have dropped down to freezing, no doubt, but it didn't get too cold below that for too long, and it means those plants have survived pretty much untouched. If they were in the open ground, I'm sure they'll have been absolutely decimated by the cold. So basically, microclimates are key. I would advise you all to sort of take stock of what's survived in your garden, which areas look like the more tender plants have survived, and that'll give you an indication of where your microclimates are and where you might want to plant more borderline plants in the future. Anywhere where there's shelter, where there's an area where there's not going to be snow getting onto plants and ice forming onto plants, will be better for the more exotic tender plants. So under canopy of trees, yes, you've got the trade-off of it being more shady in those locations, but it does mean you've got more chance of getting through any cold spells in cold winters. On the flip side of that, anywhere that gets early morning sun, so a bit more open areas where plants need some sun, go for where you get the early morning sun. East facing, east-south facing means that they'll burn off any frost early in the day, fingers crossed if it's sunny, and it's got more chance of getting through a cold winter. And also, if it's near a house or a heat source, if you've got an outhouse that's heated for some reason, the bricks will store heat from the actual sunlight in the daytime and keep that warmth and radiate it at night. And also leaking of heat from your house, if you're heating your house, that will go through the walls to some extent, especially if you haven't got great insulation, and it'll be warmer on the outside, and it means the difference between life and death, or damage and not damage, for quite a lot of plants. So if you haven't got a greenhouse and you want to grow more tender plants, bring them right next to the house wall. If you've got eaves as well, and sort of where the edge of the house is coming over your fascias, your barge boards are quite wide, and you've got the dryness, the rain shadow, it means they're not going to get too wet close to the house as well, because wetness kills as much as cold in most winters. In fact, most winters, if they're getting wet and mild winters, you can get lots of plants dying because it's too wet and it will rot the roots of plants. So try to keep plants dry over winter, look for your microclimates, and hopefully this explained why I've done a mild video and a cold video for the same garden in the same winter. Plants survive in different areas, even if it's the same species, and it's all down to microclimates. So thank you for watching this video. If you've not watched the others, please do so now. And if you haven't subscribed to my videos, please consider that. It helps my channel out a lot, and it means more people will see these videos. So thank you for watching.